All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you for joining in our ongoing discussion of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll start with the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udire nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttam shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtiki om ajnanatimirandasya jnananjana shalakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमतिभक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारणे. So today we have a few topics to cover. So we'll complete the remaining verses in the 8th chapter. Not the remaining verses, but the verses that remain before the prayers of Queen Kunti start. And I believe we have only 3 verses that are left. So we will do that, and after that, so this is from 1:8:14, and then after that we'll have a short discussion on how does material desire coexist with devotional service. So this was one of the questions that was asked, and I had mentioned that in one of the verses in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, this topic is addressed. So we won't, of course, go in all the details, but because the remaining section deals with prayers, and the question also that was asked was what was the position of Uttara when she was praying to Krishna, but she was asking for material protection. How do we understand? So we'll have a bit of a discussion on that. Then I want to have some discussion on prayers, because essentially Bhagavatam is a collection of prayers. And if after that time permits, we'll do Kunti Charita, a brief discussion on the character and pastimes of Kunti Devi, and that would basically position us in terms of appreciating her prayers more in our next discussion. So there seem to be many topics, but they're all small topics. So I'm sure that Krishna willing, we'll be able to finish it in the time that we have. So without further ado, we'll start with 1:8:14. Antastha sarva bhutanam atma yogeshvaro harihi swamaya vranodgarbham veratyaha kurvatan tatve. The Lord of Supreme Mysticism, Sri Krishna, resides within everyone's heart as a Paramatma. And just to protect the progeny of the Kuru dynasty, he covered the embryo of Uttara by his personal energy. So previous to this, we had seen we had seen two things. We had seen Uttara Devi running to Krishna, asking for his protection, Pai Pai Mahayogin, where she was asking specifically for protection. We also saw the 5 Pandavas who noticed that they were being attacked by the Brahmastra, take up their weapons to protect themselves. And then just in this previous verse 1.8.13, we saw that how Krishna, he deploys his Sudarshan Chakra to protect the Pandavas from the Brahmastra. Now that the Pandavas are safe, or rather we can understand these things to be happening concurrently, Krishna is now protecting the unborn child in the womb of Uttara. So here, so if you remember in 1.8.9, when Uttara had run towards Krishna, she had said, Pai Pai Mahayogin. And instinctively she was calling on to the supremely mystic potency of Krishna, with the understanding that she had this understanding that in order to protect her from this mystic weapon, and in order to protect her from within, not just external protection, Krishna will have to deploy his mystic powers. And Sutta Goswami in this verse, he says, Antasta Sarvabhutanam Atma Yogeshwaro Hari. So he refers to Krishna as Yogeshwara Hari, the master of all the mystics, Paramatma, who is Anthastha, who is situated within the Atma or the heart of Sarvabhutana, who is situated within the heart of all living entities. So Krishna is situated in the heart of all living entities. From the Bhagavad Gita, we know that is none other than Paramatma. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the Lord of Supreme Mysticism can simultaneously reside within everyone's heart or within the atoms by his Paramatma feature, his plenary portion. Therefore, from within the body of Uttara, he covered Avranot, the embryo, Garbham, to save Maharaj Parikshit. So that is the mystic potency that Krishna displays, that while he is there standing on the chariot, he is also situated in the heart of every living entity. So in the Isopanishad, when some of the qualities of the personality of Godhead is being described, one of it is that he's inside and outside, he's within and without. And sometimes these contradictions bewilder people, and they're meant to bewilder the non-devotees. But to the devotees, they help them understand Krishna in his different forms. That outside he's present as Swayam Bhagwan in his personal form, and inside he's present as Paramatma. And that is his, how can a person be inside and outside at the same time? That is his yogic potency. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he has a slightly different interpretation of this verse that bring forth the Bhakta Vatsalya mood of Krishna even more strongly. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that as Paramatma, Hari, Krishna was already situated within Uttara, Anthastha, but by the power of his yoga, Yogeshwar, he entered as Krishna and covered Avarnod, her embryo, Garbham. He used his Yogmaya potency, Swamaya, so that Uttara was unaware of this. So little difference. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is making the point that even though Krishna was present as Paramatma within Uttara, and in that form he could have very well saved Parikshit, but Krishna is his Bhakti Vatsalya mood is so strong that he does not even wait for his plenary portion to act. So he himself entered into the womb of Uttara and protected Parikshit. So very, very similar meanings, but slight difference in the the nuances, that Prabhupada says that Krishna as the Paramatma feature saves Parikshit, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that even though Krishna is present in the Paramatma form, he still enters as himself and saves Parikshit. In both the cases, Parikshit is saved, and it is Krishna who does the saving. Jiva Goswami in Krama Sandarbha, he explains the word Yogeshwara. He says, why is Krishna called Yogeshwara? That is because while he is externally situated in the chariot, he is present within Uttara as Paramatma. So we had discussed this. In this verse, Sutta calls Uttara as Viratya, because she belongs to the Virat dynasty. So in the Mahabharata, if you remember that when Arjun when the Pandavas had gone for a Gyatavas, they had taken shelter of King Virat. And that is why, as a descendant of the Virat dynasty, Uttara is also known as Viratya. And he refers to Parikshit as Kurutantava. So, and the reason, of course, is that even though Parikshit appears in the Pandav dynasty, the Pandav dynasty is a part of the larger Kuru dynasty, which in turn is a part of the larger Puru dynasty, which in turn is a part of the larger Soma Vamsha. So Kuru Tantva therefore refers to the larger lineage which was at stake over here. So it is not just that the Pandav dynasty was facing imminent extinction, it was also the larger Kuru dynasty, because both the Pandavas and the Kauravas, they had annihilated each other during the battle. Okay. Questions, comments? Okay, we can go to the next verse, 1815. Yadyapi astram brahmashiras-tvamogam cha pratikriyam Vaishnavam teja sadhya samashamyad bhrigudvaha. O Shaunak, glory of the Bhrigu family, although the supreme Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwathama was irresistible, and without check or counteraction, it was neutralized and foiled when confronted by the strength of Vishnu, Lord Krishna. So the verse talks in a way that it presents an impossibility, and then it negates it. So Sudha Goswami first says that the weapon was irresistible and without check or counteraction. And then right after that he says, but it was counteracted. And the reason is because of the strength of Krishna. So the Brahmastra, as we had discussed earlier, is and he specifically called it Brahma Shiras. So Shiras means the topmost. Literally it means head, but here it means topmost. So Lord Brahma had constructed many Brahmastras, and they had different varieties of strength. The Brahmashiras was the most powerful of the weapon, and it was infallible in the material world. So that is why Sutta says Astram Amogam Cha Apratikriyam, that the weapon could not be stopped, which means that it could not be there could be no impediment to it. Like if somebody is throwing an arrow, you can put a shield to stop an arrow, or it could not be counteracted. Apratikriya. So counteraction means that somebody deploys an Agni weapon and the opponent deploys a Vayu weapon or a Varun weapon, and that counteracts the weapon. So similarly, astras, there are also weapons that counteract other astras. So neither of these two things are possible. Sutta Goswami also, in the way that he addresses Shaunak Rishi, is bringing to attention the and in a subtle way, he's again bringing to attention that how dear are Krishna's devotees to him. Because if you look at it, and that is why Sutta Goswami, he calls Shaunaka Bhragu Udava, that you are the glory of the family of Bhragu. So Bhrigu is the Manas Putra of Brahma, and his descendants are called Bhargav. So most of the Brahmins belong to the Bhrigu dynasty. So Krishna has been very open about his how he favors the Brahmanas. He considers the Brahmanas to be his head. He says the Brahmanas are worshipable by me, that I eat through the mouth of the Brahmanas. So many times he makes this point. And the Brahmanas are descendants of Brahma. And Brahma himself is a very dear devotee of Krishna. So when Brahma established the Brahmastra, then he actually endowed his own potency in the Brahmastra, saying that by my word this will be invincible. So here there is a weapon by a Brahman and by Brahma. So two people or two categories of people, very, very dear to Krishna. Brahma is very dear to Krishna, and Brahmans are very dear to Krishna. And what does Krishna do? He negates both of them. Why? Because he wanted to protect Parikshit Maharaj, because he wanted to protect his devotee. So Sutta Goswami in the previous verse made this point, and in this verse again, he is by saying Bragudava, that he's saying that Shaunaka, you should know, because you yourself are a Brahman. You know that Krishna is fond of Brahmanas. You know that Krishna will not very likely negate the word of the Brahmanas. You come from the Bhrigu Vamsha that comes from Lord Brahma, and how dear Brahma is to Krishna. And you know this Brahmastra, it represents the tejas of Lord Brahma. But yet, Krishna negates it. So you can understand the lengths that Krishna will go to protect his devotees. So Sutta Goswami, he starts the verse with Yadyapi, although. So to indicate that what he is going to say is an exception to a rule. So he's saying, so the point that he's making is, although this weapon is invincible, but samashamyat, but it was neutralized. Asadhya, when it was confronted with Vaishnavam Teja. So Vaishnavam Teja is the strength of Lord Vishnu. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says Vaishnavam Teja is none other than the Brahma Jyoti, or the bodily effulgence of Krishna. In the Mahabharata, this pastime, it unfolds a little differently. And therein, Krishna, not wanting to disrespect Lord Brahma, he allows the Brahmastra to strike Parikshit. And Parikshit's or the child's body is actually destroyed. And then Krishna, he creates a new body, and he gives it to Maharaj Parikshit. So this pastime is actually described in two other places in the Bhagavatam. It will be described later on in the first canto, in the 12th chapter, in verses 8 to 10, where Sutta Goswami describes the vision of Parikshit Maharaj. So far we are talking from outside in. There he describes that what did Parikshit Maharaj see, or what did the unborn Parikshit Maharaj see. And there he says he observed the Lord only thumb high, but he was all transcendental. With a very beautiful, blackish, infallible body, he wore a dress of lightning yellow and a helmet of blazing gold. The Lord was encircled with 4 hands, earrings of molten gold, and eyes blood red with fury. As he loitered about, his club constantly encircled him like a shooting star. The Lord was thus engaged in vanquishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was absorbed by the child who thought about who he was. And that's how he got the name Parikshit. So Parikshit means that one who sees and examines. So like the same word that comes in Pariksha. Pariksha is examination. So Parikshit is, so when Parikshit was born, then he would examine everybody to see the Lord within. And later on in the 3rd canto, 3rd chapter, verse 17, the explanation is given a little differently. The embryo of Purus descended, begotten by the great hero Abhimanyu, in the womb of Uttara, his wife, was burnt by the weapon of the son of Drona, but later he was again protected by the Lord. And Prabhupada in the purport writes, the embryonic body of Parikshit, which was in formation after Uttara's pregnancy by Abhimanyu, the great hero, was born by the Brahmastra Vashpatama. But the second body was given by the Lord within the womb, and thus the descendant of Puru was saved. This incident is a direct proof that the body of the living entity and the spiritual spark are different. So sometimes when we see the same pastimes being described a little differently in different scriptures, or sometimes within the same scripture, we become a little skeptical. And one of the points that Rompad Maharaj makes is that, and he quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as saying, Tadidam kalpa bheda naiva sambhavyam. And actually, for those of you who either participated or heard his Ayodhya Yatra, Maharaj repeats this phrase 3 times for emphasis. And basically it means Tadidam kalpa bheda naiva sambhavya, that these sambhavya means these differences are bheda, these differences are possible because these pastimes occur in different kalpas. So kalpa is a day of Brahma. Sometimes it's also a manvantra. Generally, it's a day of Brahma. So the pastimes repeat themselves in days of Brahma, but while the storyline is the same, the details may be different. In one kalpa, Vara may have maybe Swet Vara, he may have a white body. In another, he may be Rakta Kalpa Vara, he may have a red body. Or in one kalpa, Parikshit Maharaj is protected. In other kalpa, his body is restored. And generally the Purans, they are not like Itihas, so they don't give much importance to chronology. They are more interested in presenting the past time from the perspective of the lessons learned or the glorification that they want to do. So the speaker may well take pastimes from different yugas, from different kalpas, and then kind of present them as if they're happening together or at the same time. And that's why sometimes we see that difference. It should not bewilder our minds. In fact, it should increase our awe for the greatness of Krishna, that how they say Krishna is a master actor And these pastimes are being enacted over and over again. And of course, Krishna loves variety. So, uh, so it is eminently possible that he introduces this variety for his own pleasure. Okay. Questions, comments?
You answered our questions, Prabhu.
Okay, that's good.
Prabhuji, like I've been thinking about this prayers and like how the Lord maybe and how Lord reciprocates, and maybe you will be covering that in the later part of your lecture when you talk about Anyabhilashita and also prayers. But I was just wondering, so maybe you might want to answer this later. But I was just wondering, like these prayers are not like triggers for the Lord to protect the devotees, right? So the Lord will never, regardless, like whether or not the devotees pray, he will reciprocate, right?
That is true, and we briefly talked about it in the last discussion, that we see in this particular pastime, we see the Pandavas and Uttara side by side in the same predicament. We see Uttara praying, we don't see the Pandavas praying. And Krishna protects both of them. And Sutta Goswami gives a reason that Ananya Bhaktas, that because both of them are pure devotees of Krishna. So prayers, and you're right, we'll talk a little bit about it later. So prayers are more for our purification, but they're also for Krishna's pleasure. So a devotee tries to do what pleases the Lord and what purifies himself. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Gaur Sundar Das here.
Hare Prabhu.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Prabhu, so regarding the Brahmastra coming towards the womb of Uttara and basically towards Parikshit, so it's trying to kill the child in the womb. It is basically abortion, not self-inflicted, but somebody else trying to abort. And recently preparing for something else, I read that this is, I think the Sanskrit name for this is called Bruna Hatya, and it is classified as one of the the 5 major sins, Mahapataka. That is the classification. So my question is around the celibacy aspect. Even the grahasthas, we are supposed to be celibate and not only for progeny we should be engaging in a union. So in a way we are also doing this, those who are not doing properly just for progeny, they are actually doing this grievous sinful act, and there are different shades of it. So I was thinking, so Ashwatthama being a Brahmana and he knows this very clearly, it would have been, I mean, I'm just thinking myself in my life, it's very great sinful act to kill a child in the womb. It can be in different forms. So I don't want to go into the details, but how do we, I mean, it becomes, the celibacy becomes a great importance in a devotee's life. Looking at this pastime especially, we may not be doing a Brahmastra, but we may be doing something, a medical procedure, or so. How do you see that, Prabhu, in the devotee's life? How do we Because practicing celibacy is a great challenge.
So it's thank you for asking it. It's under all circumstances, it's a difficult question to ask and to answer, especially in a limited time and the setting. Celibacy is definitely highly recommended for one who's aspiring to make a spiritual advancement. The regulative principles do enjoin celibacy, or a person who releases semen for the purpose of conceiving is considered to be celibate. I guess your question is more about people not following the fourth regulative principle, and either birth control or some other method. It's not at the same level as garbhopat or abortion, because the soul only enters when there is union of the sperm and the egg. And before that, there is none. The reason that it is not recommended is because of two reasons. One is that so Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that this whole material world is built on sex desire, which means that it continues to increase our attraction to the material world, or it weakens our resolve from getting detached. So this is the more subtle aspect of it, that one begins to think that the material world is a place of enjoyment, and despite everything else, there is something that is worthwhile in it. And from this sex desires, then the other desires also evolve. So it becomes a root of the tree that binds us to the material world. And the other aspect, of course, is the more physical aspect, that it is difficult to follow spiritual practices when one is engaged in non-celibate activities. So there is a book called Brain Gain by Danveer Maharaj, and he talks about it from both. He talks about it from the psychosomatic aspect. He talks about it from the spiritual aspect. He brings forth the script, the quotes, etc. There, Prabhupada's writings there. So it's a good big book to read. It develops faith and conviction. And yes, it is one of the more difficult things for, especially for men. It's one of the more difficult things to control. It's testimony, and the fact that there is some level of control that can be executed. It's testimony to the potency of devotional service. That the fact that that a man can live with a woman and still be able to demonstrate some level of control, that itself means that it is an empowerment that's coming from outside and not from within. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
And Prabhuji, in line with our Gaurasundar Das Prabhuji's question, like you mentioned that the soul directly enters the womb of mother only after the union happens. So if the soul never enters through father to mother, then how can anybody be a father? Because I was thinking that soul enters from the father to mother through the semen.
It's a good point. Both things are said. So in the Bhagavad Gita, and this is, I believe, in the 3rd chapter, this point is made that how from the rains the grains come, and from the grains the semen is produced, and how through that the soul enters. And then this point is also made that when there is union within the womb of the mother, at that time the soul enters there. So honestly speaking, my guess is both are right, but I don't know how to reconcile the two of them. Srila Prabhupada would often say, and this is, I'm kind of endorsing the point you make. Srila Prabhupada would say that the soul that comes from the father, and the mother provides the material body for the child. And Prabhupada says based on Vedic injunctions there. But then in many of his conversations, he, especially when he was speaking against abortion, he would say that the moment the union happens, their soul appears at that time, and the living entity is there. So sometimes people would say that early term abortions are fine because there's just a bunch of cellular mass over there, and Prabhupada would say no. As soon as the union happens, the soul enters at that time. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. 1816. Mamam sthaya tadashram sarvashcharyamaye chute yedam maya devya shrajte avate hantyajaha. O Brahmanas, do not think this to be specially wonderful. In the activities of the mysterious and infallible personality of Godhead, by his own transcendental energy, he creates, maintains, and annihilates all living things, although he himself is unborn. So this verse is summarizing the pastime of Krishna with respect to the Pandavas and Uttara. So Krishna stops the unstoppable Brahmastra, or he replaces the body of Parishit Maharaj. And the acharyas say for him, it is as difficult as it is for the sun to evaporate a drop of morning dew, which is saying in a colorful manner that it is an easy task for him. So Sutta refers to Krishna and his activities as Sarva Ashcharyamaya Chuta. Sarva Ashcharyamaya. That it's something that astounds everybody. So it brings forth two important aspects of Krishna in this pastime. One, that his activities are Sarva Ashcharyamaya, that they fill everybody with wonder. Difficult to justify to reason, to rationalize the activities, but they fill one with wonder and awe. And second is Achyuta, that is infallible when it comes to protecting his devotees. And that itself is even more wondrous. So how wondrous are his activities? So just to give a sample, so we have already seen one sample of his activities, how he negated the Brahmastra, protected the Pandavas, protected Uttara. And Sutta Goswami gives another sample. He says, Srajati avati hantidam. And Maya Devya. Maya Devya means by his own energy, divine energy, Srajati avati hanti. He creates, maintains, and destroys idam, this creation. And he does that all without any help from anybody else. So those people who are apparently helping him have been empowered by him. It's like when a father wants a child who is being very noisy to help. So the father will give the child something and say, okay, do this. And the child will sit on the side and do it. But it's actually the father who has given him the tool, taught him the skill, and who is actually the empowerment behind that. So even though it may seem that different demigods are doing, Brahma is doing, Lord Shiva is doing, but ultimately everything is being done by Krishna alone. This whole process of creation, maintenance, and destruction. And more wondrous than that is that Krishna is Ajaha. He's unborn. So he himself has no experience with this. He has no experience with birth or death or the intervening style of maintenance, but effortlessly he is still able to orchestrate all this. So for one who creates universes over and over again, how difficult is it to create a new body for Parikshit? For one who annihilates entire universes by taking a breath, how difficult is it to neutralize a Brahmastra? And for one who maintains countless living entities in countless universes, how difficult is it to protect Parikshit? And the most amazing part is that he does all this because he is a Bhakta Vatsalya. That this greatly powerful personality is actually subservient to the love of his devotees. So this verse will now be the springboard of the prayers of Kunti Devi. So I'll stop the chapter discussion over here, see if there's any questions or comments. Otherwise, we'll have a brief discussion on Anyabhilashita and then on prayers. Okay, so so the segue to this is that when we were to the Anyabhilashita verse was that when we were discussing the pastimes or the nature of devotees, one of the question came up was that how would we, and I'm paraphrasing it at this point, how would we consider Uttara to be a pure devotee if she has material desires, namely that she's saying Pai Pahe Mahayogin, that protect me. And at that point I had mentioned that this point is explained by Rupa Goswami. So this verse actually, and this verse most of you have done Bhakti Shastri. So in the Nectar of Devotion, it appears in the first chapter, Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadin Avritam Anukulena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhaktir Uttamam. It is actually a verse that appears in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11. And the verse is spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Rupa Goswami. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Rupa Goswami on the science of bhakti, so this happens close to Prayag at the Dashvamedha Ghat. Dashashvamedha Ghat. So for 10 days, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he instructed Rupa Goswami, and this was part of the instruction. He spoke this verse, and then Rupa Goswami later on writes this verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So the translation of the verse is, when first-class devotional service develops, one will be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruitive actions. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So the analysis of this verse is done very nicely by Dhanudhar Maharaj in Waves of Devotion, where he says that this verse talks about the 5 lakshans, or the 5 characteristics of bhakti. 3 are called Swarup Lakshan and 2 are Tathastha Lakshan. So Swarup Lakshan is what is considered to be necessary but not sufficient. So if they are absent, then it means that the object is not there. If they are present, means that the object may be there. So the three that are Swarup Lakshan are that the devotional service is an active intention, is an active engagement. Devotional service is performed to please Krishna, and the intent of devotional service is to please Krishna. And again, so they are not the primary focus of our discussion, so I won't go into them. But these are the primary characteristics. If these are missing, then bhakti is not there. So if bhakti is not in relation, if somebody is doing activities not in relationship to Krishna, it is not bhakti. So it must be in relationship to Krishna. Then the intent must be there, which means that somebody is doing agyat sukriti. Without knowing somebody is performing devotional service, it is not bhakti. It may be the segue to bhakti, but it is not bhakti. Or the examples are given of demons, that when demons are fighting with Krishna, they're pleasing Krishna because Krishna has a virya ras. He has this, he enjoys fighting. But their intention is not to please Krishna. So it is not bhakti. So the Sarup Lakshan is lacking, and it's an active engagement. So that's why Prabhupada always translates bhakti as bhaj, which means to do as a verb, based on this verse. So the other two lakshans, Tathastha Lakshan, one of them is Anyabhilashita Shunyam, which is the one that is relevant to our discussion here. So the first consideration is that if the Tathastha Lakshan is missing, then by the presence of the Sarup Lakshan, bhakti is present there. If the Tathastha Lakshan are present, then it becomes Shuddha Bhakti. If they are absent, it becomes Mishra Bhakti. So, and that is basically our biggest hope, because when we are executing bhakti as per these three primary characteristics, even though we may be filled with material desires. So instead of being Anyabhilashita Shunyam, we are Anyabhilashita Purnam. We are filled with all other desires. But if the three Swarup Lakshan are being met, it is still considered to be bhakti. So that is one consideration, that's how we can consider that. So let us even assume that Uttara was full of material desires. But the fact that she was devoted to Krishna, surrendered to him, favorably inclined to him, qualifies her as a devotee. The second point that is more relevant to this discussion is the use of the word Anyabhilashitam Shunyam. So why does Rupa Goswami use Anyabhilashitam as opposed to Anyabhilash? So Anya means others and Abhilash means desires. So he could have said Anyabhilasha Shunyam, the divide of all other desires. But when he says Anyabhilashitam, then the desire gets modified into desireness, which is not very communicative, but the English word would be motivation. So the example that is given is that the devotee may be walking down the street and a lion jumps on the devotee, and the devotee says, Krishna, Krishna, protect me. Does that make him a Mishra Bhakta? Does that make him a materialistic devotee? It does not, because it is Anyabhilashitam. So he does not have a desire to use Krishna for material benefits, but circumstantially he is in a transient manner taking shelter of Krishna. So the motivation behind the bhakti is not material. the transient manifestation of the bhakti may be material. So it is transient because the motivation is not there. So if a person goes into a relationship motivated by love, then there may be times that they may have disagreements, or they may be quarrels. That does not define the relationship, because the motivation is that of love. So these transient phases are in no way considered to be are considered to be a block or a dark mark on a devotee's aspirations. Such a person is still considered to be a pure devotee. Second point that is made is that when you're talking about abhilash, what constitutes as desires? So if a person is hungry and he goes out to eat food to satisfy his hunger, does that make a person materialistic? Or if he is tired, he seeks the shelter of a tree and sleeps over there, does that make a person materialistic? It does not. Because those desires are coming from a platform of sustenance, from survival, just to maintain the body. And of course, this is a lot of it is predicated on the sincerity of the devotee. So sometimes people may take shelter of that and say, well, I have to eat, so let me eat opulently, or I have to sleep, let me make arrangements. But what Rupa Goswami says is that as long as the desires are in the purview of maintenance, then they are not considered to be desires. Just like karma, that is there just for sustenance, does not have the same level of reactions. So when one is just sustaining one's body, one performs some karma, that does not have the same level of reactions. Sometimes people say that vegetarians also kill and eat, and we say we offer to Krishna. But even if the food is not offered to Krishna, the karmic reaction is much lesser, because these are sustenance activities. So taking both these things into consideration, one can understand that Arjun taking shelter of Krishna, Uttara taking shelter of Krishna, it does not in any way impinge on the pure devotion that they have with Krishna. Okay. Questions, comments?
Prabhuji, what are the two tatastha lakshanas that a devotee should carry?
So Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. So not covered by Gyan Karm Adi. So Gyan so Gyan Karm Admi is basically pursuing devotional service for the sake of knowledge. That there are people who just like the Gyanis, right? They will read the Vedas for the sake of enjoying the Vedas, or the Karmis. Adi refers to the yogis. So if it is present there, then it is Karma Mishrit Bhakti, Jnana Mishrit Bhakti, Yoga Mishrit Bhakti. Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, if it is absent, then that Bhakti is Bhakti Uttamam. Then it is defined as Shuddha Bhakti.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Madhuji.
Hello? Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, for the beautiful explanation. I will hear it again. But I just want to ask, like you said, as long as you gave the example of one is tired and one is hungry, they eat to sustain. So sustenance. So I understand that sustenance of with material body or subtle body like mind, intelligence, false ego, or gross, as long as we are having a pure devotion for Krishna, is okay. Is my understanding correct, Prabhuji?
Yes, that's
Not for the sense gratification, but sustenance purpose.
Yes, yes, that's the point I was making. And sometimes if you look at the verbiage that we use, it is used to kind of emphasize that part, uh, like when devotees will say that they are sleeping, they won't say they're sleeping. They will say they're giving the body, they're resting. Basically, they're resting the body. Why? So then the body can be again used in Krishna service. So then that mood is by speaking, that mood gets emphasized. Sleeping is more, it has a connotation of that I am sleeping, I am resting, sense gratification. But when you say that I'm giving my body rest, it's kind of like you have a car and it's overheated, so you're letting it rest for a while, so that again you can use it for service. Or similarly, honoring prasadam, you don't say you're eating, which basically has a connotation that is for your gratification. But honoring prasadam means that you're performing an act to please Krishna and also to give nourishment to your body so that you can continue to use it in his service.
So that applies to, even pure devotee? That applies to pure devotee.
It especially applies to pure devotees.
Because I remember Bhagavatam only in Canto 1 reading that one has to minimize eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and in the sense like to make it nil, like a pure mating, pure in eating, pure in sleeping, pure in defending. And I also, I can send the link to that part of the purport later. So I was thinking like, is it all like sustenance is the highest of pure devotion, or making it nil? All these things like needs of the body, both gross and subtle, making it nil, is that the highest? I just wanted this clarification. What is the highest?
So the highest is to use it in Krishna's service, neither to reduce it or not to make it nil, but to use it completely in Krishna's service. That's the principle of Yukta Vairagya. That was the point I was making, was that, even when we sleep, we use that sleeping in Krishna's service. Even when we eat, we use that in Krishna's service. So we are not part of the Neti program where we say, that is voidism. That where we say,
I understand that impersonalism, but our point is like, as we do this, as we use it in Krishna's service, are they going to become nil? Is that the goal? Is that the result?
So as you use it in Krishna's service, what you will aspire to make nil is your attachment to it.
Wow.
Right, nothing else. Everything else will be the same, but your attachment to it will become nil. So let's assume you become an eloquent writer, and you write to glorify Krishna. So then, what happens is that you do not consider that you are an eloquent writer, but you consider that this is Krishna's gift that you're using in Krishna's service. So that is what you will make.
Nice point. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a comment. If we can summarize it as if the attitude and the intention of the devotee is to please Krishna as Krishna desire, I'm saying also here that to please the devotee, not only Krishna, because sometimes we are surrounded by devotees and we don't have Krishna in front of us. Therefore, if our attitude and intention is to please the devotee, we are also pleasing Krishna.
Yes, good point. Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, one question. I'm trying to understand, like Tatastha Lakshan is like you mentioned that it should be there to basically I mean, of course, the primary should be there. All the three primary should be there, but then it should also like Tatastha Lakshan should be there with the but along with the primary. But then, I mean,
so if the Swarup Lakshan is a necessary condition, if it is not there, then so in this case, if the any of the three Swarup Lakshans are missing, then what is being executed is not bhakti. It cannot be called bhakti. If all three are present, then it will be called bhakti. If the Tathast Lakshan are present, then it will be called Shuddh Bhakti or Purna Bhakti. If the Tathast Lakshan are absent, then it will be called Mishra Bhakti.
which is what I'm struggling to understand, Prabhuji. So if Tatastha Lakshan is like, so in Anyabhilashita, the first Tatastha Lakshan, Anyabhilashita, so that means that if unwanted desires are not there, then it is pure, right? I mean, how will the unwanted desires, when they're present, will it be?
No, Anyabhilashita Shunyam, right? So if unwanted desires are absent, then it is pure devotional service. If they are present, it's still devotional service, but then it is Mishra Bhakti, right? So that describes most of our situation, right? We are devotees, we are favorable, we are executing activities favorable to Krishna with the intent to please Krishna in an active engagement, but we have material desires. So does that mean that what we are executing is not bhakti? No, it is bhakti, but it is not Shuddha Bhakti.
Yeah. I was actually removing the negation. So Shunyam and Anavratam, I was actually removing that and just taking the.
Okay. That explains that.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So let's start with the discussion on prayers. Glorification of prayers. And for those of you who take notes, there's no need to do it, at least. So I'll send the document to Prem, Kishore Prabhu and Achyuta Mataji, and then they can make it available. I should have sent it ahead of time, but I wasn't able to finish it in time. So apologies for that. So prayers is one of the 9 processes of bhakti. And does anybody know which of the 9 processes prayers?
Shravanam, Kirtam, Smaranam. Smaranam.
Vandanam by Akrur.
Vandanam. So Vandanam is prayers, and Ashang Prabhu said that the devotee who perfected this particular anga of bhakti is Akrur. And so everything that we do as part of bhakti, we saw the definition, is to please Krishna. And Krishna is pleased by our prayers. How do we know that? Because Krishna says so. And one of the places he says is in the 6th canto, 9th chapter, verse 47, where Krishna says that the Supreme Personality, where Sukadeva Goswami says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O beloved demigods, you have offered your prayers to me with great knowledge, and I am certainly most pleased with you. A person is liberated by such knowledge, and thus he remembers my exalted position, which is above the conditions of material life. Such a devotee is fully purified by offering prayers in full knowledge. That is the source of devotional service to me." So this is, of course, Krishna responding to prayers by the demigods. And he said that one who recites prayers in knowledge is executing pure devotional service. So So one of the questions that often comes up is, why do we have to pray? If Krishna is Paramatma and he knows everything, then what is the need for us to tell him? Sometimes you ask a person to chant and they say, Krishna is in my heart, he knows that I love him. Why does he need this external manifestation? Because japa is, again, it's a prayer that we do. So the reality is that prayers is not about knowledge. Even though Krishna says one who recites prayers with full knowledge, that's a different kind of knowledge. It's not gyan, it's vigyan, different kind of knowledge. So prayers are not about knowledge, it's about loving reciprocation. So um, between a husband and a wife, if the husband does not, the wife may know that the husband loves her, but if he does not remind her periodically, or put it the other way around, that if when he does remind her periodically, then she gets even more happy. She becomes more pleased. And same thing, when the wife reminds the husband gets more pleased. Similarly, the relationship between a parent and a child, or relationship at work. So in relationship, just knowing is not enough. Expressing is actually much more important. And when we express ourselves, then Krishna is touched by the expression, the effort that we have put in expressing what he already knows, but the effort that we have put in expressing it, and his reciprocation also intensifies. So in spiritual life, everything starts with prayers. So if you look at your own life, from morning to evening, there is one prayer or the other that you are doing, right? So for those of you who are more living according to the Hari Bhakti Vilas, Sanatana Goswami says, as soon as you get up in the morning, the first thing that you should do is recite these prayers. That, oh Vishnu, thank you for allowing me to wake up today, so that I can spend the rest of the day in serving you and devotees. And then just before you put your feet on the ground, you pray to Mother Earth that you carry the weight of the whole creation, and forgive me for putting my feet on you, but allow me to do so that I can execute devotional service. When you're bathing, you pray, and then of course you pray to the deities, you chant the holy name, you do the Gayatri. So it's basically a whole a life of a devotee is completely architected around prayers. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that the prayers that are imbued with Sharanagati, that are imbued with the mood of surrender or helplessness, are the most potent prayers. The analogy that he gives is that the mother knows what the child needs. At 6 o'clock, feeding time. 7 p.m., changing time. So the mother knows and she takes care of it. But when the child cries, the mother is even more attentive to the child. So similarly, Krishna knows. He knows our desires, he knows what we want. But when we pray in this mood of helplessness, in this crying mood, then we specially attract the attention of Krishna. So the underlying emotion in our prayer is that please help me, or please come to my rescue. So we pray for help, we pray for we pray for protection from envy, protection from lust, from greed, from anger. So there are so many things that are anarthas. And at the end of the day, the greatest of all the prayer is we pray for service. How can I serve you? How can I serve your devotee? And praying not only attracts Krishna's mercy, it also dissolves our own ego. The biggest impediment that we have in making spiritual advancement is that of our ego. And when we pray in this mood of surrender, that on my own, there is nothing I can do, so we are automatically placing we are cutting down our ego. What kind of prayer should we chant? So in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, it said there are 64 items of devotional service. This is Sadhana Vedi Bhakti. One of the items is to offer notable prayers. And what makes a prayer notable? What makes a prayer notable is if it has been spoken by a pure devotee of Krishna or a previous acharyas. So there are two kinds of prayers. There are what are considered to be standard prayers or notable prayers, and there are spontaneous prayers. So we may pray to Krishna that, oh Krishna, please help me, please make me a devotee. So these are just prayers that we compose spontaneously and we offer to Krishna just based on our realizations, which are good. And then there are prayers that are given to us by great personalities. Prayers by Prahlad Maharaj, prayers by Dhruv Maharaj, by Gajendra, and these are imbued by their realizations. These are imbued by their mercy. And when we recite those prayers, we also get a glimpse into their realizations. So that is why the recommended way to prayer is Mahajana Yena Gatha Supantha, is by following the footsteps of the great acharyas. So there are four types of categories of prayers. There are tamasic prayers in the mode of ignorance. So these are prayers that are done to harm other people. Prayers by Hiranyakashipu, by Raman, that they wanted strength to harm other people, and those are prayers in the mode of ignorance. Rajasic prayers are for material gains. That you pray that give me wealth, give me strength, give me a good progeny. So just completely only for material gains. So those are Rajasic prayers. And then there are Sattvic prayers that are for welfare, for helping others out. Prayers like what's the prayer? Asatoma sadgamyo tamasoma jyotirgamyo mrityurma amritam gamyo, or prayers by Prahlad Maharaj in the 5th canto, that may there be peace in this world, may the people who are envious be pacified. So these are Rajasic prayers. They're generally prayers for welfare. And then there is the 4th category, which is prayers for spiritual advancements, which are Shuddha Sattva prayers. And these have 2 subcategories. One are prayers for mukti, and the other is prayer for bhakti. So mukti is generally done by, prayers are done by jnanis, and the prayers for bhakti is done by devotees. So of course, the context of our discussion is the 2nd category, which is prayers for bhakti. So typically speaking, a prayer will have 1 or 4 of the following elements. There is glorification of the Lord. There is humility about one's position. There is asking for benediction. And then there is asking for forgiveness. So all 4 may not be present, but typically 1 or 2 or sometimes all 4 will be present. That as we noticed in prayers by Arjun and prayers by Uttara, that there is always this element of glorification, either through use of relevant names, and then there is this element of asking for benediction, which is asking for protection. So these are the elements in terms of the construction of the prayer. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami talks about 3 levels of prayers. This is level of advancement. So the first level is called Samprarthanatmika. And these are what are considered to be introductory prayers. The second level is Dainibuddhika, which are called stable prayers. And the third is Lalasmai, which is perfected prayer. So the first category, the Samprarthana Atmika, is translated to a complete prayer or prayer with complete feeling. So these prayers are the beginning of one spiritual realization. These prayers are there to, when a devotee begins to acknowledge the position of Radha and Krishna, and to understand the glories of devotional service. So like the first two verses of Shishashtakam, they fall in this category. So there is no actual praying there, but there is an understanding of the greatness of Krishna. Cheto Darpan Marjan, the seven qualities of pure devotional service, or Nam Namakari Bahuda Nij Sarvati. Your names are so powerful. So these are some Prarthika prayers. Or Narottam Das Thakur. So Narottam Das Thakur has this book called Prarthana, which he divides into 3 subsections, and he has prayers in each of the 3 subsections. So in the Samprarthika, he has this prayer that, O Radha Krishna, this person presents an appeal before you. You are both very charming and full of nectar, and your hearts are full of compassion. My Lord, please listen to my request. And prayers by Kunti Devi fall in this category. They are Samprarthana Atmika prayers. The second level of prayers is Dainibuddhika, which is considered to be in the mood of awakening or humble submission. So at this level, the epiphany for the devotee is, Krishna is great. I would like to serve Krishna, but I am unable to do so because I have so many anarthas. So the previous level was one of awareness. This level is one of experience. That one now is trying to experience Krishna, but is unable to do so because of whether it is actual or perceived, but because they consider themselves to be full of anarthas. So the Shishtastakam 3rd and 4th verses, they fall in this category. And Narottam Das Thakur in his prayer, he says, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karo More. And then later on he says, Mam Sama Patita Prabhu Na Paibe Ara. That there is nobody who is as fallen as I am. Because at that time the person actually begins to see all their shortcomings that are an impediment to their devotee. Or Bhakti Vinod Thakur has this song, Amara Jivan Sada Pape Rahita. That in my life I have always committed sinful activities. The third level of prayer, Lalasmaya, which means perfected or Lalasmaya means extreme longing. And the prayers at this time are in the hopes of strong attachment, and they may actually seem to be contrary. So like in Shishtastakam, the prayer is that what's the 5th and 6th, Nayanam Galadastudharya, Vadanam Gadgad Rudigira, Poloke Nichitam Avapukada, Tavnam Graneg Bhavishyate. When will my eyes? So the person is actually saying, when will I start crying? I mean, under normal circumstances, nobody will say this kind of things, right? Most of the people say, when will I start laughing? When will my crying days be over? But in this particular mood, they're saying, when will my throat choke up? When my yugayitam nimashena chakshusha pravarshanam shunitam jagat sarvam. When each moment will appear to be like like a yuga. So these are the last my prayers. Prabhupada has actually given us one the last my prayer to chant ourselves, which we do in the part of the morning prayers, which is the Tulsi prayers, where we are aspiring to be pure devotees of Krishna. So in the Gaudiya Vaishnav Abhinandan, these three categories are divided into subcategories, and they give 10 categories. I'm not going to go into them, but they will be there when I send it to you. You can read them. They're basically, and again, to be honest with you, they're a little bit of too much details, but since the acharyas have put it over there, they're relevant to us. So, as per many acharyas, the Bhagavatam essentially is a collection of prayers. And can anybody recollect the major prayers in Bhagavatam, other than prayers by Kunti Devi, which we are going to be talking about? What are the major prayers in the Bhagavatam?
Prahlad Maharaj's prayers.
Prahlad Maharaj's prayer to Narsingadev, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What else?
Lord Brahma's prayers.
The what?
Gajendra Moksha prayers.
Gajendra Moksha prayers. So the Gajendra Moksha prayers, they appear in the 8th canto, 3rd chapter. Prahlad Maharaj prayers are in the 7th canto, 9th chapter. What else?
Lord Brahma's prayers.
Lord Brahma's prayers for creative energy, 3rd canto, 9th chapter.
Dhruva Maharaj's prayers to
Dhruva Maharaj's prayers for glorification, 4th canto, 9th chapter. And by the way, I don't remember this. I have it written in front of me. That's why I'm able to.
Vritrasura prayers?
Vritrasura prayers. Yes. Yes.
Prabhu, we can say Gopi Geet is of prayers where the gopis was feeling separation from Krishna.
It's a good point, and that gives me a segue. So there are some more prayers, and I'll just take Shang Prabhu's segue. But then there's a Narayan Kavach, which is one of the few very strongly materialistic prayers in the Bhagavatam. You don't see those prayers very much in Bhagavatam, but Narayan Kavach is one of the few prayers where you're praying to the Dasavatar and to a little bit more than the Dasavatar, but basically protect me in foreign countries, protect my head, protect my behind, protect me from enemies. So, but Narayan Kavach is there in the 6th canto, 8th chapter. There's praise by Bhishma Dev in the 1st canto, 9th chapter, Ambrish Maharaj for personified Vedas. Then prayers by the residents of Jambudvip in the prayers by the residents of Jambudvip is in the 5th canto, 18th chapter. Prayers by the demigods in the 10th canto. And the segue is the Gitas. So Gitas are not really prayers. So Gitas are songs. Bhagavad Gita, a song of God, but they're like very close cousin to prayers because they contain, especially if the Gita is by a devotee. So like Bhagavad Gita is by Krishna. So you don't see prayers over there. There are instructions, there are guidance over there. Similarly, Uddhav Gita. In the Bhagavatam, there are instructions there. But then there are other Gitas in the Bhagavatams, and they are actually prayers because they are songs that are sung by devotees. And when the devotees sing, then they sing the glories of Krishna. So some of the famous Gitas are Rudra Gita, which is the song of Lord Shiva, especially to the Prachetas. Then there is the Venu Gita, which is the song of Krishna's flute. Gopi Gita, as Sang Prabhu was mentioning, this is the calling of the gopis and the gopis' glorification of Krishna. Then Yugal Gita. The Yugal Gita is the gopis' songs as Krishna wanders in the forest. There is the Viraha Gita. So Viraha Gita is the gopis' song when Krishna leaves for Vrindavan with Akrura. Then there is the Brahmar Gita, which is Radharani singing to or singing through the bumblebee. Then there is the Mahishi Gita. It's the 10th canto, 90th chapter, which is the song sung by the queens of Dwarka to glorify Krishna. This is Uddhav Gita, which is like Bhagavad Gita, instructions by Krishna. There is Bhikshu Gita. Bhikshu Gita is a song by the Avanti Brahman, part of the Uddhav Gita, but because it's by a devotee of Krishna, it's more like a prayer. The Bhikshu, or some verses in the Bhikshu Gita are actually recited by the sannyasis on a daily basis. Just like we do the Gayatri, in addition to the Gayatri, they also recite verses from the Bhikshu Gita. And then there is the Ayala Gita. The Ayala Gita is sung by Pururav when Urvashi leaves him. And there is Bhumi Gita, which is the song by Mother Earth. So to summarize, prayers are very important because they are one of the prescribed angas of bhakti, because Krishna says so, and because they are practical and easily accessible. So Gajendra, at the time of dying, he could not have done a yoga asana, or difficult for him to meditate on the impersonal Brahman. But when he was in a lot of pain and suffering, it was easy for him to pray. So that is what, but the reason he could pray was because he was practiced in praying. And that's the reason that we pray, is that when we are at the time when our soul is leaving our body, then prayers come naturally to us. And just like they say, the death is the final exam and the life is a preparation. So in a way, as we pray, we are preparing for the time of death. Good for us to recognize the various levels of prayers. We don't have to artificially anchor us at the last mile level or at an exalted level. Good for us to pray at the level that we are, and good for us to pray both spontaneously, but more so according to the realizations of the other Mahatmas. So that as we pray, and as Krishna says, when you pray with full knowledge, as we pray, then the potency of the prayer also works on us. So when Madhavendra Puri prays that when I think of Krishna, my lips curl in disgust at the thought of sex desire. And when we recite that prayer, then hopefully eventually we may also be at that position. Or when Kunti Devi, she recites these beautiful prayers to Krishna, and I shared that in the previous lecture, that Kunti Devi's prayers are the favorite of Srila Prabhupada. That he would chant them when he was alone, and he would chant them in a melancholy mood. The 2 times when he was very, very sick, he asked his disciples to chant Kunti Devi prayers for him. So the prayers, they not only give us spiritual attachment, they also give us material detachment. So when we see the prayers of Kunti Devi, we'll see these 2 themes coming very strongly. That he glorifies Krishna in both ways, as one who is giving her material detachment and one who's giving her spiritual attachment. So I'll stop over here, and we have 1 minute, but see if there are any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
Haribol Prabhuji, thank you. It was so beautiful explanation. I wanted to ask, is prayer for purification right way of praying, Prabhuji? Like I often, when I actually at moment-to-moment interaction and emotions, I try to introspect, and when I analyze that the root causes anarthas like anger, greed, envy, like that. So I immediately pray because it's something I cannot overcome, and so that I can perform pure devotion. So I just pray to Lord saying that, please purify me so that I serve you better in a pure consciousness. Is that a right prayer, Prabhu?
Yes, absolutely. So when we were discussing the Samprarthana Atmika, so that is the nature of those prayers. So some means to make complete. So we are incomplete because of these anarthas. We are incomplete in our relationship with Krishna. So 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 uh, so those are the prayers that we do. That I have these weaknesses, that I become inattentive while chanting, or sometimes I become lazy when I'm supposed to do this, or whatever it is. So Krishna, please help me. And when we do it sincerely, it means what it means is that we are also aspiring and at the same time striving sincerely. So the mood is both, that we try and we also aspire. So our effort is there, and then Krishna's mercy we are asking for.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you.
And Prabhuji, like when to pray what? So you mentioned that we should pray according to our level, but we have these prayers from the pure devotees as well. So I'm just wondering, like, should we pray the prayers of pure devotees should be recited when we are not in trouble, and then pray more like on our level based on the situation,
Right. It's a good question. Um, so right now I'm speaking more from just personal realization that prayers are so prayers are very, very personal, in the sense that you read a prayer, and there'll be a prayer that will resonate so much with you that it just it just feels some prarthana atmika, that it's completing me. And that's what the prayer should be, whether it is it is from prayers by Prahlad Maharaj or Dhruv Maharaj, or prayers by Narottam Das Thakur, or by Srila Prabhupada. Um, Difficult to establish a kind of a scientific rule for it. Spontaneous prayers should generally be anchored according to your level of realization, and standard prayers should be anchored as per to your level of inspiration. So spontaneous prayers is what you just say, right? So for instance, me, I would not go to Krishna and say that, Krishna, when will my throat choke up, and when will tears flow from my eyes? I'm not at that level of realization. So when my spontaneous prayer to Krishna would be more like, Krishna, please help me chant better. Please help me serve uh, um, Vaishnavas and Guru Maharaj better. Things that I'm aspiring to do and would aspire to do better. Right? So they are basically they are basically according to my level of realization. Perfected prayers are more in terms of your level of aspiration. That yes, you like the prayers of uh, even Kunti Devi, right? Kunti Devi's prayers, they have this component that is scary. The Kunti Devi says that may all these material trials and tribulations happen to me again and again, because they help me think about you. And when devotees read that, or if or they do not like to recite it, because they're fearful that Krishna might take them seriously. So it all depends on what your sincere level of aspiration is. Prahlad Maharaj's prayers are very strongly in the mood of wanting to serve Krishna. So as you read different prayers, then there will invariably be some prayer or some set of prayers that will strike a chord in you, which will basically resonate with your mood of inspiration. And you see that as you recite it, especially when you're in anxiety, or especially when or even not, if you're in a peaceful mood, you'll see that it creates it calms your heart. It helps devotional service take deeper roots in your heart.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. And also, like when is it that Krishna is more pleased when we're chanting the prayers of his pure devotees versus versus our own spontaneous prayers? Is it safe to say that?
It's a good question. I would so so I would answer it in a different way, that at least the recommendations to us is to chant the standard prayers as opposed to spontaneous prayers. And from there, I can just deduce that the reason the recommendation is there is because it is more pleasing to Krishna. I don't remember reading this explicitly anywhere, that Krishna is more pleased when we recite standard prayers. But Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj has a series of lectures on prayers, and there he makes this point more than a few times, that when devotees are recommended, and that's where he says Mahajana Sukatha Supanta, that that's what pleases Krishna. When you follow in the footsteps of the other acharyas, and in the same mood, when you recite the prayers composed by them, they are more potent in terms of offering us purification.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And also one last thing, like the 4 different types of prayers that you mentioned, prayers of gratitude, prayers, and the other 3. Like, is there a hierarchy on which one is better than the other, or should our prayers be like a combination of all the 4 elements, or like how do you? I mean, the categorization.
Right. So there are considered with the 4 elements of a prayer. So they say typically a prayer is composed of these 4 elements. There is no hierarchy, and it's not that they all 4 have to be present, but this is just on the basis of seeing the prayers composed by different Mahajans and Acharyas, that they typically contain these four elements. There is a strong element of the glorification of the Lord, and coupled with the glorification that Krishna is great and I am minute. So coupled with the glorification of the Lord is humility of the self, and benediction is, and actually I was quite pleased to see that element of benediction, because sometimes we think that it's a bad thing to ask for benedictions, but actually when you go to somebody's, it's not so much in the present culture, but in more in the older culture, it was almost expected that when you go to somebody's house who was at a higher status than you, then you will return with a gift. The person will give you something. It was just part of the social protocol that you go to the house of an elder person, the person will give you. They'll give you money, or they'll give you a gift, or they'll give you benedictions. So similarly, Krishna is much higher than us. So when we are contacting Krishna, it is very natural for us to ask for benedictions, whether it is for bhakti, whether it is for mukti, whether it is for bhukti. And of course, as devotees, our focus is mostly on bhakti. But yes, and finally, forgiveness, which is basically that gap. I want to be there. I'm here. I know I should be there. I know I should get up in the morning and chant my rounds, but I'm not able to get up in the morning. I'm sorry about that, but I will try to do better. So yes, so no particular hierarchy, but they're generally the constitutional elements of a typical prayer.
So, Prabhuji, this categorization, is it based on our level of purification, that first we will think about like gratitude will come first, and then then we will see our minuteness, and then we will ask for forgiveness, like
not really. So it's not. So again, these 4 elements, they are not levels of prayers. They are constituents of prayer. So it's not that you go first from the level of glorification, then to humility, but the point that is made is that a typical prayer, even by a neophyte, would probably contain these 4 elements there. So when we read prayers, then instinctively as we follow through them, we will see, and they will not be like structured in this way that part A is glorification, part B is humility, but you will see all these 4 elements becoming prominent at different points in the prayers. They'll be commingled, but you can distill them and see that these 4 elements come up. So they're just the constituent elements of a typical prayer.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, my apologies. We have gone over time. So I'll stop here. Next week onwards, we will start with our prayers of Queen Kunti. Please read the prayers and Prabhupada's purport, and so that way we can have a really really deep and nice intimate discussion on it. Thank you again. Vanchakalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nithai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna.